morning, learned friends. The topic that Dr. Ramanohar has given me is regulations in the field of Ayurvedic medicine in general, challenges and solutions. I must consider at the very beginning that maybe I will be able to touch upon a few of the challenges that are in front of us, but finding solutions are perhaps beyond me. And I must also say that I understand that the general theme of this conference, as well as the specific theme of this session, is research. I will perhaps be talking more generalities, much less science will be the universal business considered. Now, the scope of this presentation will include a passing remark about the concerns of the classical Ayurveda on regulation per se, the governmental intervention, its history, and the regulatory domains, and certain aspects of concern for the Ayurvedic fraternity, and a possible way forward. I must also take an excuse from you in the sense that most of you Ayurvedic professionals may think that regulations are not really a matter of great concern, but I tell you, yes, it's going to be a matter of concern for all stakeholders in the practice of Ayurveda, not only in your practice but in your armamentarium as well. The Ayurvedic preceptors were not blind to the need of regulation. I must say that our keynote speaker has already prepared the platform for me for all these statements. They were not blind at all, and I will only cite one typical example of the concept of Pada Chaturshaya in Ayurveda. The Ashtanga specifies the quality and standard requirements of a physician, the medicine, and paramedical staff as well. In its philosophical outlook, it goes on to specify the required characteristics of a patient as well. Now, why government started intervening? There was a very specific reason. About 5 to 6 decades ago, the responsibility for ensuring the quality of the medicine that a physician uses lied exclusively on his principles, which was decided by his one-to-one linear relationship with his patient. And there was no other thing. It was based on his ethical parameters decided by the socio-economic culture of that kind of time. It is no more valid. Presently, the drug manufacturer, its retailer, and the physician who prescribes, and the patient at last are all four different entities in the society. And naturally, the government has to intervene and take the responsibility of regulating. And the government regulations, I must say, is a comprehensive one. It's not about research alone that's what I want to tell. Pharmacopoeia Committee was set up in 1962 in the middle of the last century under the chairmanship of Professor Joshi. And the practice of Ayurveda was brought under the purview of Drugs and Cosmetics Act of the country in the same year. And a primitive version of the Ayurvedic formulary was brought out in 1978. And pharmacopoeia standards, which were essentially some physicochemical parameters of those formulations, were brought out in the form of a volume in 1918. And a very tiny department of ISM, Indigenous System of Medicine, was set up in 1994 during the Prime Ministership of Mr. Narasimha Rao. And the first Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia started coming out in 1995. Now there are 2 streams. Part 1 comprises single drug specification. There are 8 volumes already. I don't know that it's 11 as Dr. Narayana said. And then part 2 talks about compound formulation. There are already 4 volumes which have come out. It's an ongoing activity. And a new series of formulary and update on the earlier one started coming in 2003. And a very globally important regulation came not in 2007, in 2006 on heavy metal regulation. There are specific regulations on that now. Establishment of a pharmacopoeia commission, Dr. Narayana is in charge of that, as all of us know. And Ayurvedic drugs are now redefined. You must be aware that there are earlier only 2 different kinds of Ayurvedic medicines. Those which were called as Schedule 1, which were in toto, lock, stock and barrel, taken from classical textbooks. There are those which are known as PMP, which are amended ones, modified ones, proprietary ones. Now, there are a few more attached to that, like Poshak, Benlik, Saundaryavardhak. Not only that, aqueous extracts, solvents, by using solvents, hydroalcoholic solvents, even solvents other than that. They don't even bother to say whether it is highly or mixing. And of course, now the current schedule set GCP and CLP rules, and that's an ongoing activity. Now, the domains of regulation are essentially on clinical practice. For example, there is an NABL, National Accreditation Board for Hospitals, Quality Council, color grading for hospitals. In the case of research, new guidelines are there which have just come out 2 weeks ago, and Schedule Z is there, which is in the form of discussions now. Then for drug manufacture, there is a GMP regulation, drug licensing, etc. And for drug marketing, packing, withdrawal rules are there. And in the case of education, as all of us know, there is a pan-Indian, normalized, universalized university system with a single syllabus, etc., etc., CCIM. What I want to tell is that there is a thinking in the mind of the general lay public that the Ayurvedic sector is absolutely not regulated, which is not the case. It is very heavily regulated, and it's an ongoing activity. It's an evolving stage. Now, in the case of clinical practice, there is a dichotomic situation as far as the Ayurveda is concerned. The particular aim is to protect the safety and rights of patients in the case of clinical, and that of the trial subjects in the case of research. And now the regulations on clinical research and drug licenses have an overlapping zone. What is that? Ayurveda, unlike modern medicine, has conceptual and epistemological concerns in need for conducting clinical studies apart from drug licensing. That is the issue. I will just set a few examples. A scientific initiative in Ayurveda is a mega project mooted by Professor Valayathan. It has 4 different arms. None of them has anything to do with the drug development. And now, currently, there is a task force on Ayurvedic biology under the Department of Science and Technology. The projects they are trying to support and fund have nothing to do with the development of a drug, standardization of drug, getting it licensed. No. They are all about fundamental aspects of Ayurveda, which will also involve clinical aspects. And in all these activities, the regulations have absolutely nothing to say, or it has a bit of a problem. Now, in the case of research, I will just go through quickly. In the case of research, there are 2 components, those which are connected with clinical practice. There are the 3 concerns. The ethical concerns, to protect the right of a population or the subject of a trial. There are procedural concerns. You need to take approvals from different bodies, and also there are scientific concerns in order to ensure that the data being generated are accurate, precise, reproducible, and objective. Now, there are also trials which are not clinical in essence, and they are ruled by the principles of Cartesian methodology. All physical sciences you have to follow. You have to start from the prior art, the existing knowledge. You must have a hypothesis, you must design an experiment, you must generate scientific data, you must analyze, come to certain conclusions, and finally you must also be able to integrate that new information so that you produce a new theory which adds to the knowledge base. Here it is essentially Cartesian methodology. And in the case of drug-related regulation, the objective is to regulate the import, manufacture, distribution and sale of drugs and cosmetics, is the official statement. And the philosophy being that a drug is understood to be an effective weapon to fight diseases and death. It says death. It's a long called vision interpretation, because Ayurveda believes that a physician is not Prabhu of his life, but it tries to fight death as well. And its regulation is the tool to ensure its highest quality and purity. Now there are a few which I will just skip because the time may not permit me. These are all with the other kinds of regulation, label, this and that. There are many which ultimately will affect the use of drug. In the case of Schedule Z, which is recently evolved and designed and put in the form of a draft, which will be incorporated into the Drugs and Cosmetic Act, which gives specific steps for undertaking clinical trials for the purpose of getting a drug licensed. To bring out standard protocol for planning and executing clinical trials, including all the 4 phases, for generating validatory data from human trials, for applying for license or renewal of license of an Ayurvedic medicine. Now its form is essentially largely adapted after Schedule Y, which is already in existence as a part of the Drugs and Cosmetic Act pertaining to modern medicine validation. And its content has elaborate provision for ensuring the safety and rights of the trial population, and it follows scientifically validated procedures and practices of data generation. No questions on that. But the Schedule Z, it must be categorically stated that conceiving and formulating the Schedule Z draft and GCP guidelines are major steps by regulators for the future development of Ayurvedic practice. Okay. But then they may need further refinement by taking into account certain aspects of Ayurvedic practice which may refer to conceptual, systemic, contextual and documentational aspects of Ayurveda. Dr. Narayana has already partly referred to that, but I think this is the core aspect that we may have to put across the board in certain things for consideration. I will just try to enlighten that point by referring to 4 types of issues, 4 categories of issues. I am citing a few examples. For example, there are very many specifications in Schedule Z which do not necessarily take into account the Ayurvedic concepts, its principles, its modality, its approach. I will suggest 3 or 4 examples. There is a need for establishing a chemical identity of the active ingredient of a polyherbal formulation. That's a problematic area. Dr. Narayana indicated that some possibilities. We are not talking about the marker compound. What is the identity of an active ingredient in the case of a polyherbal formulation, which may contain anything between 20 to 60 to 70 herbal ingredients? I will cite a typical example of Maharaja Prasadani Taijam, which contains 115 ingredients. What do you do with that? And to have an analytical data in Schedule Y, it's fine. It is very specifically stated. You should have elemental analysis, you should have a mass spectrum, you must have NMR spectrum, and a few others. What do you do with this big mess of a combination? And requirements of phase 1 to phase 4 have no reference at all to any diagnostic, therapeutic, pharmaceutical concerns of Ayurveda. They are there, but then they have nothing to do with the current practices. Should they be married to that? We may perhaps have to consider that. And Schedule Y naturally is concerned about the possible toxicity arising from the use of a new chemical entity or a new molecular entity. But that is perhaps not the case with this polyherbal formulation, because one specific condition of Drugs and Cosmetic Act is that you cannot use any ingredient other than those mentioned in the classical text. You cannot, theoretically, you cannot use ginseng as an Ayurvedic drug. It's not new in that sense. Now, again, the concept of phase 3. The phase 3 trials insist that the trial should be multi-centric, it should be running into thousands of population. More importantly, it should be a heterogeneous population. That has an epistemological conflict with the Ayurvedic concept of a homogeneous approach, a personalized therapy, where they always say, Purusham Purusham Vikshya Sajnayo Vishaguttama. How do you marry those two concepts? I really do not know. Now, the second category, the lack of preparedness of the part of Ayurveda sector. The sector cannot blame anybody else, but then the facts of life are that the sector, which comprises about 9,900 entities of a broad spectrum kind of capabilities and reach and essentialities, they are not presently in a position to take up any of these trials. For example, there is a requirement of GLP laboratory testing. If I understand correctly, there are hardly 25 GLP accredited laboratories in the whole country. And the closest in the South India is one located in the city of Coimbatore, and which has nothing to do with the drug at all. They are all about agricultural research. Now, the question of genotoxicity, which refers to DNA damage, as all of us know, and carcinogenesis from a new chemical entity and a new molecular entity. Are we talking about molecules in Ayurveda? That's a question that we will have to ask now. Now, the phase 3 trials may be out of reach for the majority members of the sector, which would involve a couple of thousands of subjects to be collected across from multi-center centers. Now, a third category, there is perhaps a need for a bit of providing more clarity to its provisions. Like, for example, the same set of forms, 24D, are required to be submitted both while seeking a license as well as for starting a clinical trial. Actually, at the time of seeking a license, you need to have already generated data from a clinical trial, and that should be a part of your application. How do you do the same set of forms? Now, the fourth category, this is the last of them. There seems to be some mix-up, apparently due to straight adaptation from Schedule Y. As he said, this copy-pasting has created a little bit of a problem. I will cite a few examples. It refers to studies for allowing import of Ayurvedic drugs, which is registered abroad, and assumes multinational registration of Ayurvedic drugs. It also says that in the condition when you import a drug, and if it is already registered elsewhere, what are the kind of trials you need to do to get it registered in India? Is there a condition where an Ayush formulation, Ayurveda formulation is registered as Ayurveda formulation anywhere other than India? We really do not know. This probably has happened. It happens in modern medicine. All the molecules are registered elsewhere. They are brought into India. Yes, the government can insist that you please do trials here as well. But this has happened just because of this copy-pasting issue. And it also more seriously assumes an Ayush drug for intravenous infusion and injectables. Drugs and Cosmetic Act, as it is now, never has anticipated this kind of an administration of an Ayurvedic drug. No, never. And how to define active ingredient of a polyherbal formulation and how to devise an assay for it. So these are few issues, and based on that, and I will also say just one more point. The present regulations focus at clinical trials more as a requirement for drug licensing. That is the essence of it. But in the case of Ayush, the Ayurveda, they have a more important concern to study the diagnostic, therapeutic, pharmaceutic and conceptual parameters and modalities by employing modern scientific principles and tools. That's a fact of life. We are increasingly required to validate based on modern scientific methodology the concepts, as he was telling, the quotation that we often take from all these classical textbooks, then the imperative statement that we make. There is a need for getting them validated for our own sake. Let aside the export and all that, for our own sake, for our better understanding of the issue, it's better that we have an appropriate building of modern scientific tools and its methods and the science. But in that purpose, the present regulations do not provide for the epistemological need. Moreover, they may tend to hamper such initiatives because this was never in their focus. And there are other issues, I will just skip that, barcoding, branding, etc., Schedule H issues. And what could be a way forward? I am not very clear in my mind, I have just tried to put across a few of them. Initially, the regulators seem to have a global perspective, very fine. Ultimately, we should be more concerned about the domestic perspective I have a feeling, but then they seem to be having a global perspective. The aim, rightly, is to lead Ayush to a global platform. That also is okay. Thus, the modality seems to be to adapt to the form and content of the modern regulations. This is a very easy procedure, this is a rather risk-free approach. So far, fine. However, it is likely to lead to situations of epistemological conflict, as I have just now mentioned earlier. What is perhaps required is a more comprehensive approach while evolving Ayurveda-related regulatory environment by bringing into focus the ethos, the paradigms, and the philosophy of Ayurvedic knowledge space, as well as the strengths and constraints of its practice. There are certain constraints as well, but the government should be sensitive to those issues. It may be deemed appropriate by the policymakers to find ways of enhancing the capabilities and equipage of Ayurveda so that it manages to keep pace with the aspirations of the regulator. Presently, they are not equipped to do that. They are absolutely nowhere near the requirements. And finally, at this juncture, it is also proposed that the possibility may be considered of bringing about a certain amount of homogeneity in the regulatory environment of Ayurveda by delinking the various provisions of excise rules, forest rules, wildlife rules, narcotic rules, and any number of other rules, because the drugs, as drugs, should they be completely brought under the purview of drug rules rather than the multiple. Thank you, friends. Thank you for your patience.